Hello, everyone watching on Facebook or watching in Zoom, which, I should check. We do have people that want in. I always forget that too. The new feature we added. Okay, we'll do a do-over. Hello, everyone that is out there in Facebook and here in the Zoom meeting with us. My name is Renee. I'm the event coordinator at Old Firehouse Books. I want to thank you all for being here with us this evening in our virtual event space. This evening, we are here with local authors Laura Resau, Teresa Funke, and the translator of two of their books, respectively, in Spanish, Gloria García Diaz. We are here tonight to celebrate the release of the Spanish edition of, Teresa Funke, her new book. Well, the Spanish translation is new, V de la Victoria, which is the Spanish translation of V for Victory. Before we launch into introductions for these authors, I just want to give a few reminders to people who are out there watching. First of all, you can purchase this book on our website, oldfirehousebooks.com. There's a link if you're watching on Facebook. There's a link to the buy page in the description, and I will post it in the chat for the Zoom meeting here in just a minute, so you can click that link and go buy a copy if you would like one. We are, of course, going to be doing the Q&A during this event, so if you're in the Zoom meeting, there's the raise your hand function along the bottom of your screen. When we get to the Q&A portion, feel free to use that raise your hand function if you would like to unmute yourself and turn your camera on to ask the question directly to our speakers. If you aren't able to, if you have barking dogs or crying babies in the background, you can also just go ahead and post your comment in the chat box and they can see it and answer it that way. If you're watching on Facebook, you can use the comment section below or beside the video, wherever it lives, and post your question there or your comment, and I will relay it to our authors here in the Zoom meeting. So we definitely want to hear from you. If you have any questions about anything that we talk about here tonight. And again, to our Zoom viewers, if I haven't said it already, please just keep yourself muted and your cameras off while the event is taking place so we don't have any distractions. And then, like I said, you'll have your chance to get some FaceTime at the end of the event. All right, we will go ahead and get started. So like I said, tonight we have three amazing people here that are Fort Collins locals. We always like to support our local people here in Fort Collins. Teresa Funke is an author, speaker, and consultant and community catalyst. She has written 7 award-winning works of fiction, a well-received inspirational blog, and numerous published articles, essays, and short stories. Laura Resau is the author of several highly praised novels, including The Lightning Queen, drawn from Laura's experiences living in rural Mexico, and the acclaimed Notebook series. Laura's books have garnered many state and library awards, as well as multiple starred reviews. Gloria García Diaz is a bilingual writer, Mexican folkloric dancer, and singer who grew up in Mexico City. She writes poetry, stories, memoir, and picture books in Spanish. She has also done the Spanish translation of Laura's book, Star in the Forest, Estrella en el Bosque, which I'm sure I kind of pronounced wrong, and also translated Mamis Felices by Kathleen Pelly, and now V de la Victoria by Teresa Funke. Thank you all for being here tonight. Yeah, Gloria, translate those books. Thank you all for being here. I'm so excited to have you all in the same virtual space to talk about this new book and just the importance of books in Spanish and all of that. So I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Teresa. She's going to kind of lead the discussion and take it away, Teresa.
Okay. Well, I wanted to welcome everybody and thank you for listening in tonight. We're really excited, the three of us, to be here. We're all friends and we feel really strongly about books in Spanish, and we're very excited to be here and to have this conversation tonight. And I wanted to see if Gloria would be willing to welcome everybody in Spanish and let you know that we will be using some Spanish in the conversation tonight. Repeating some key phrases and doing a little bit of a reading in Spanish, and just bringing in our Spanish speakers to help them enjoy the event as well. So Gloria, do you want to welcome everyone?
Sí, bienvenidos a esta charla de miércoles 9 de septiembre del 2020. Hoy tenemos este tema acerca de las traducciones de los libros de estas escritoras locales. En el panel están estas honorables escritoras, que es Laura Resau, Teresa Funke. Estas dos escritoras son locales y son muy famosas. Están dándole duro para traducir sus libros y esa es la discusión hoy, cómo sufren, cómo le han hecho. Y bienvenidos en un momento más vamos a tener algunas frases en español. Si alguien tiene una duda, por favor, póngalo en el chat y podemos contestarlo. Muchas gracias por estar aquí con nosotros.
Right. Thank you, Gloria. So
You're welcome.
I thought I would start out tonight by telling you this is sort of a book launch party, in a sense, for my book, Ve de la Victoria, because normally, if we were not in the time of COVID, I would have had a party and we would have had a book launch and people would have come and helped me celebrate the new book. But since we are in a virtual world now, we're doing this virtually and we're happy to be able to do that. I wanted to tell you a little bit about how this book came about. It's actually, I've written 7 books about World War II. And they're all based on real people that I've interviewed. The first 2 books were were for adults, and then I have a children's series called the Homefront Heroes series, which V for Victory was the 3rd book in the Homefront Heroes series. And so it's a multicultural series. The first story, doing my part, is a Caucasian girl in the Illinois Valley who's working in a war factory. And the second book is The No-No Boys, and it is a Japanese-American boy in a Japanese internment camp. And then V for Victory is a Mexican-American boy in San Antonio. And it's loosely based on my family, which we'll talk a little bit more about. The main character is loosely based on my uncle, Roman. And then the next book is Wave Me Goodbye, and it is a Jewish girl in the Bronx. And then the next one, the last one in the series, is War on a Sunday Morning, and it is the Pearl Harbor story. So the purpose of these books was to get kids familiar with what children accomplished during World War II and how important kids were during the war. So this was a time in our history when the men were fighting, the women were working, and the president himself said to the kids, "We need you to help us win this war. The adults are busy. We need you to get out there and do scrap metal drives and rubber drives and victory gardens and use your own pocket money to help pay for war bonds." And kids stepped up in a way that I think we haven't often called on them to do in American history. And so I wanted to celebrate that in the series. And each book has a section in the back that tells you about the real person the book is based on, and then also more about what kids did during World War II. And so V for Victory is, of course, really important to me because it is based on my family's experiences. So my family was Mexican-American and they ran grocery stores in San Antonio during the war. So in the book, Miguel is, this is sort of a, loose representation of our store. And you can see there's a piñata in the corner and there's a little baby in a wagon. And if the men were fighting and the women were working, it was the older children who were responsible for taking care of the little kids. So in the book, he's stuck dragging his little nephew around everywhere he goes. And in the wagon is a lot of metal because he is participating in a scrap drive contest. He wants to win the contest that the local movie theater is doing so that he can win the $25. So this book for me was really important because it's loosely based on my uncle sharing his memories of our store during the war, and you can read more about him in the back of the book. And so that's my book, and then I wanted Laura to tell you a little bit about her book and how it came to be. Laura?
Okay, thank you, Teresa. And I want to first of all welcome everybody. Thank you so much for being here. I see some familiar names and faces in the participants, so thank you for taking time out of your evening to be here. And I also would just want to say Teresa's book is wonderful, and I just reread it, and for, I don't know, I guess the 3rd time, and it's really heartwarming and fascinating, and I love that it's based on her family history. That makes it really special. And I think that inspires readers to value their own family history that much more. So my book that I'll be chatting about is Estrella en el Bosque, Star in the Forest in English. And this book is very special to me. It's my only book that's in Spanish at this point. Gracias a Gloria García, Diaz, who translated it. So I got inspired to write this book because I heard from a 12-year-old reader who was actually from Fort Collins, Colorado, who had read one of my other books about a girl who visits her grandparents in Oaxaca, Mexico, which is where I lived for a couple of years. And this girl really enjoyed that book, but she explained that her situation was different from the girls in my book. Her situation was that she was undocumented, and if she wanted to go to Mexico, it would be very hard for her to return to the United States and very dangerous. And so that made me realize, especially at that time, this was about 10 years ago, there really weren't many books out about undocumented kids' experiences. And so that was really the motivation to write this. So this book is about a girl here in Fort Collins, and she is feeling upset because her father has been deported to Mexico. And she kind of takes comfort in an abandoned stray dog that she finds in the forest behind her mobile home, in her mobile home park. And she also becomes friends with another girl in the neighborhood. And so they give each other support during this difficult time. And ultimately, the girl believes that this dog has a special spiritual connection to her dad. And if she can protect the dog, keep the dog safe, that maybe her dad can come home safely and their family will be reunited. So that's what the book is about. I was so thrilled when Gloria translated it, get available to a much bigger audience so that families can kind of share it together.
Laura, can you tell us how?
Gloria, would you like to?
I was going to see if Gloria, could you tell us how you and Gloria met and how you chose Gloria to be your translator?
You, Laura.
My internet connection just went out for a second, so I didn't hear what Teresa said, so I think you have to answer the question, Gloria.
Oh, okay. Sí, yo conocí a Laura casi, no sé, que serán unos 16 años, 17 años. La conocí, ella era maestra de Front Range Community College. Yo estaba estudiando English as a Second Language ahí. Ahí la conocí y ahí conocí también a María de Queen of Water. Ahí estábamos las dos en una de las clases de Laura. Y sí, esa fue la primera conexión que tuve con ella. Más tarde, años más tarde, la decisión de Estrella en el Bosque vino, pero fue mucho, mucho después.
Yeah, so I'll just translate that for the English speakers. So I taught English as a second language for many years, and Gloria was a student of mine way, way back, like, I don't know, like, what, 16 years ago. This was at Front Range Community College. And Gloria stood out to me as an amazing, wonderful, brilliant student. And we found out we had creative writing in common. And we had a lot to talk about and a lot of writing to share with each other. And so we kept in close touch all these years. And so she ended up translating this book to Spanish before we had any contract with the Spanish publisher for it. But she did it because she loves the book. And I was so pleased and honored that she did that. And then we ended up finding Scholastic Press in Espanol to publish it.
Great. Yeah, so then what happened with my book was I run giveaway programs at the holidays, and I've been doing this for, this will be the 12th year this year, where I provide books to nonprofits that work with at-risk, low-income, and Latino families, and provide copies of my books to those organizations so that the kids can get a book for the holidays and their families can have a book. And every year the families would ask me, you know, in Spanish, they would say, do you have any books in Spanish? And when I would say no, it was just so hard to see their disappointment when they walked away. Now, a lot of their children could still take one of my books in English and they could read them, but they couldn't read them with their parents, or some of the kids were newly arrived and they were struggling with English still. And I just thought, I really need to have this book in Spanish. I also work a lot with the schools, and I go and I do school visits, and there are times when there are kids in the classroom who don't speak English very well, and they're trying to follow what I'm saying, and all of their peers get one of my books, and they get one too, but it's in English. And I thought, you know, if I had the book in Spanish, the kids could read alongside their peers, and how empowering that would be. So I had met Gloria years ago because through Laura Resau, and coming to hear Gloria sing and watch her dance, and we had just kind of gotten to know each other over the years. And so I reached out to her and said, you know, would you be interested in translating my book? And she was immediately interested. She knew the book, she loved the book, and so she thankfully was willing to work with me on that. Does that sound about right, Gloria?
Yeah, exactly right. Sí, estaba muy emocionada porque este libro habla de una familia mexicana, a donde se hablaba únicamente español. Y es muy interesante al hacer la traducción, decidir si vamos a poner, oh, puede, no puede hablar. Mi abuelita únicamente hablaba español. Es muy interesante saber a través de la lectura historias como la de Teresa, que su familia, ella viene de familia mexicana, hispana, o como le queramos decir, y su familia tenía por primer lenguaje el español, y el libro se me hizo que era más que necesario que estuviera en español para las audiencias que hablan español. Y también, pues, en estos momentos tenemos urgencia de unificarnos, de unirnos, de saber, de estar en la misma página. Y creo que un libro en español nos enseña, así ella habla de la Segunda Guerra Mundial, y este libro nos enseña cosas que yo no sabía, como la recolección de chatarra, la contribución que los niños, hijos de padres mexicanos, tuvieron en esa época para la guerra. No sé leer. Creo que leer es una conexión con nuestras propias raíces. ¿A dónde están? ¿A dónde estábamos? ¿Desde dónde venimos?
Yeah, that was, I'm not going to remember everything you said to translate it, but it was beautiful. But I really liked the last thing you said about how reading is really a connection with our roots, with our families, with our roots, with our culture. I think that's beautiful. And I think that Teresa's book is a great example of this. I mean, she learned about her family history, and, you know, these are relatives who spoke Spanish. And so this is a way, I think, for her to reconnect with her roots and then offer this gift to other readers and families as well.
Yeah. So we thought we would just do a very short reading. I know it's hard on Zoom to listen.
Are we to read the section?
Yeah, sorry, we're having like a little glitch where Laura is okay, so did I cut you off?
No.
Okay. We're kind of freezing up a little bit. Yeah, I thought I would read a really short section from V for Victory, which actually came out in 2009, and now finally, after all these years, I have the translation. I'm just going to read the first couple pages so you can get a sense of hearing it in English and then hearing it in Spanish, and then Gloria and I will talk a little bit about the translation process. So here's just the first couple of pages of V for Victory in English. So, Chapter 1, The Contest. The Empire Theater is packed to the rafters with kids. Up in the balconies, they rain candy wrappers and spitwads down on us kids below. But when the theater manager steps out on the stage and raises his arms, we settle down. We know what's coming. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, he says into a microphone, have we got a treat for you? We're scooching to the edge of our seats now, ready to jump up. Today we bring you all the way from Hollywood, California, everyone's favorite singing cowboy, Roy Rogers. The huge movie screen starts to rise and the manager hurries off stage. And there he is in the center of the stage, the king of cowboy movies, Roy Rogers himself, sitting atop his Palomino horse Trigger, who nods his head to the crowd, his front hoof pawing the ground. And the noise in the Empire is thunderous. Kids are clapping and stomping their feet. Hey, Roy, they yell, hoping he'll look their way. I glance up to the painted sky on the ceiling, half expecting it to crack down the middle. My best friend Gary is hooting and hollering as loud as anyone. He's waving his white cowboy hat, which is too small for him now. At 12, almost 13, we're a little older than most of the kids in the theater today, and probably too old to be wearing cowboy stuff. But I've got my fake sheriff's badge pinned to my shirt and a yellow bandana tied around my neck. And Gary has his cowboy hat and a real Western-type shirt with fringe that his grandmother sewed for him. It's Roy Rogers, after all. Roy tips his hat to the audience and does some riding tricks on Trigger while singing a song. Then he jumps down and starts his rope tricks, which is what Gary and I came to see. This one's called the butterfly, he says, as his rope spins small loops on either side of his body. And this one's the Texas skip. His loop grows larger and he jumps right through the center of it. All of us kids watch in silence as he shows us a few more tricks, then drops his rope to his side, doffs his hat, and gives us a sweeping bow. Then we all go wild again. So that's the setup for chapter 1, which takes place obviously in a movie theater in the 1943, I think is the summer of this one. And then Gloria is going to read that exact same selection in Spanish.
Capítulo 1, el concurso. El Teatro Empire está repleto de niños hasta las gradas. De arriba en los balcones una lluvia de envolturas de dulces y escupitajos nos caen a los niños que estamos en la parte de abajo. Pero cuando el director del teatro sale al escenario y levanta sus brazos, nos calmamos. Ya sabemos lo que sigue. Señoras y señores, niños y niñas, tenemos algo especial para ustedes, dice en el micrófono. Nos deslizamos al borde de nuestros asientos, ahora listos para brincar. Hoy les traemos desde Hollywood, California, al cantante vaquero favorito de todos, Roy Rogers. La pantalla gigantesca empieza a levantarse y el director se apresura a bajar del escenario. Y ahí está él, en el centro del escenario, el rey de las películas vaqueras, el mismísimo Roy Rogers, montado en su caballo palomino, Trigger, que inclina su cabeza hacia la multitud con sus pezuñas delanteras rascando el suelo, y el ruido del Empire es ensordecedor. Niños aplaudiendo y pisando fuerte. ¡Hey, Roy! ¡Hey, Roy! Gritan, esperando a que él voltee a donde están. Echa un vistazo hacia el cielo, pintado en el techo, tal vez como esperando que se rompa en dos. Mi mejor amigo Gary está gritando y lo hace tan fuerte como cualquiera. Agita su sombrero de vaquero que ahora le da demasiado pequeño. Con 12, casi 13 años ya somos un poco más grandes que la mayoría de los chicos en el teatro y probablemente demasiado grandes para estar usando cosas de vaqueros. Pero yo tengo mi insignia falsa pegada en mi camisa y un pañuelo amarillo atado alrededor de mi cuello. Y Gary tiene su sombrero de vaquero y una camisa auténtica al estilo oeste con flecos que le cosió su abuela. Al fin de cuentas es Roy Rogers. Roy apunta con su sombrero a la audiencia y hace algunos trucos de equitación montando en Trigger, mientras canta una canción. Después baja de un salto y empieza sus trucos con el lazo, lo que Gary y yo vinimos a ver. Este se llama la mariposa, dice mientras el lazo gira en pequeñas ondas al lado de su cuerpo. Y este es el salto Texas. Sus ondas se agrandan y él salta a través del centro. Todos los niños lo observamos en silencio mientras él nos muestra algunos trucos más. Luego tira el lazo a su lado, se quita el sombrero y hace una reverencia. Después, todos nos alborotamos otra vez.
Thank you. That was wonderful. It's so exciting for me to hear it in Spanish and to hear someone who reads as well as Gloria read it. It's beautiful. I appreciate it so much. I thought I would just talk for a minute or two about what it was like for the translation process. And Laura, then I'll ask you what your experience was. But for me, I know a lot of authors who've had their books translated into other languages, and oftentimes languages they themselves don't speak, and they don't have any involvement in the translation process. The book comes out, they trust that it was done well, they might hear from people from those other countries who let them know. But it was really fun for me to be able to work with Gloria because she was so interested in the story and she was interested in my family history, but also we could sit down together. This was, pre-COVID. We could sit down together and we could talk about the book and the translation and the challenges of translating a book that takes place in the 1940s and has children who are speaking the kind of slang that kids would use that maybe adults would not use. And, how do you translate those words and those expressions, and what's the context and what's the meaning? And so, like I remember in that section we just read, Gloria asking me to sort of demonstrate what I meant by scooting to the edge of the seat, which she was sure she knew what that meant, but she just wanted to be really sure. And so I, part of it, sometimes it was me like demonstrating what that would look like. Other times it was just trying to find the right Spanish word that would evoke that verb, or that would be something that a kid would say, which is very different than something that an adult would say. And then there was just like slang words like hootin' and hollerin'. You don't think about it when you're writing a book in English and you're writing a historical novel. You don't think about, how do you translate an expression like hootin' and hollerin'? What is that how do you get the feeling of that to come across in Spanish? And so that was really fun. It was fun for me to, help Gloria understand some of the World War II in America experience. And then also for her to make suggestions to me of what she thought would be a better phrase to use than maybe would have been the first thing that popped into my mind. I should say I'm not fluent in Spanish at all. And so, part of our conversation was even just looking at word for word what it should be. It was really fun to do that and to go back and forth. And then Gloria suggested that I mentioned that my mother is Mexican American, but she didn't grow up speaking the language because my grandmother didn't want them to experience prejudice. So my mother had to learn Spanish in college, and she was a bilingual teacher for many, many years. And so we asked her to help us with the translation too, and she would read a chapter and then write back with questions for me and Gloria to consider from her perspective. I've never gotten to do anything with my mom before, and it was a real honor for her and a real something really that meant a lot to her to help be involved in translating her family's story. And so Gloria, what was that experience like for you working on this book? Oh, you're on mute.
You're on mute.
Gracias. Sí, fue muy emocionante también en la parte a donde yo hice la traducción como bike. En español nosotros decimos corto baica o decimos bici, y yo estaba muy segura que bici era una palabra que se usaba comúnmente aquí. Entonces, no, resulta, no, mejor déjale bicicleta, porque bici bici es la traducción de bike, pero no era tan conocida en esa época. Entonces, fue un poco, fue una lucha de palabras, como siempre digo, fue una lucha de palabras, de sentimientos, de expresiones. Fue maravilloso cómo logramos. It was beautiful how we ended deciding the right words for every single traduction. So it was fun. It was fun. I was telling them
Gloria,
about
can I translate that real quick before I forget? Yes. And then you can, I will go back to you. I just thought it was interesting what Gloria was saying. She said, for example, she thought she knew how to translate the word bike, right? Bici. That's what we use nowadays. But she, after doing some research, she realized, oh, she should probably translate the full word bicicleta because bici wasn't commonly used in the 1940s yet. So these were the kinds of decisions and conversations and the kind of research that she had to do. I think that's really interesting. And then in addition to looking at the words, she had to look at, well, what are the feelings? What is the tone? What are the emotions in the scene? And really capture those.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You can continue now, Gloria. Sorry to interrupt.
Sí, la contribución de su mamá fue crucial. Su mamá dijo, no, sí, usa bicicleta, no es muy común para mí bici, usa bicicleta. Sí, la contribución, creo que cuando estás traduciendo un libro es lo mismo que cuando escribes un libro. Necesitas la contribución de las personas que saben, como los aviones y los bombarderos y cosas que en esa época eran muy comunes, pues sí fueron un challenge, pero gracias a su mamá, a las conversaciones que tuvimos, pues se pudo hacer de una forma pues positiva y se logró el resultado. Uh-huh.
Yeah, so Gloria was talking again about how crucial.
You can tell her now.
Yeah, like how, is your mom's here, isn't she, Teresa?
No.
Oh, okay.
She doesn't do technology.
Okay, I get it. Okay, so yeah, Gloria was talking about how important a role Teresa's mom played in this and how special and important it was to kind of hear her input on words like bike, for example. And then just also generally how important it was to really look at expert knowledge and research on, things like airplane terminology and this kind of thing. So, Gloria really felt like the whole experience was very positive and rewarding.
Yeah. Yes. And my mom is a very astute reader. She's one of the best readers that I know, critical readers. And she was really impressed with what matters most in a translation is, as Gloria was saying, that you get the mood down and that the humor comes across and that the children sound like children. And my mom just thought Gloria really nailed that. She thought she did a great job with word choice and with the mood and the voice. She said she's very good at mimicking your voice, and that's crucial in a translation. And so, yes, my mom was very, very happy to be a part of this. And the original book is, because it was the third book in my series and it was my dad's turn, the original book is dedicated to my dad, which is kind of silly because he's not, he's not the Mexican-American side of my family. So in the Spanish translation, I actually took the opportunity to dedicate the Spanish translation to my grandmother, who helped raise me. And that meant a lot to my mother as well. So, so then I just wanted to talk a little bit too about what each of us feels. Right now, I think each of us feels it's very important that books be available in Spanish and that kids have opportunities for books. I know for me, I've been advocating for 12 years for home libraries, and that's why I started my program. It's called the Great Book Giveaway, and I do it every Christmas, and I have sponsors, and I work with local nonprofits, like La Familia and Realities for Children, and several different nonprofits, and we provide the books to the children and the families because I've been studying for years that kids who own books, children who have books in their home, are much more likely to read at grade level, to do better on the tests, and they're even more likely to graduate from high school. And so it was a shock to me to realize how many kids don't own books, don't have books in their homes, because my privileged children each had their own bookshelf, their bookcase in their home. So I've been advocating for 12 years for home libraries. Well, then this spring, of course, we saw why that was so important. when with COVID-19, all of a sudden the kids were sent home from school, the libraries were closed, the school libraries were closed, and yet teachers were telling kids read for half an hour a day. And these kids are saying, read what? I don't have books. And so for me, I think it's critical for kids to own books, to have that sense of ownership about books, and for children to be able to read with their families is really important. And I know Gloria felt that this book, being a boy character who loves airplanes and he's trying to win a contest, that boys would read this book and that maybe they would read it with their fathers, because across all ethnicities, it's more often the women, you know, the mothers who read to children. And she thought maybe this will encourage fathers to read with their sons. And so that's really important to us too. So to have the book in Spanish and be able for the kids to read with their parents and their grandparents, I think was really important to me with this book. Do you agree, Gloria?
Sí, yo estoy totalmente de acuerdo. Para mí, Estrella en el Bosque es perfecto para Mami en Girl y B de la Victoria para papá e hijo. Es muy difícil que los padres abran sus sentimientos como uno de Mami. Y este libro muestra cómo un padre puede tener una conexión fría, no importa, fría o corta con un hijo, y cómo no es tan fría, cómo es esos detallitos de escuchar, de complacer, de estar ahí. No sé, para mí es un libro perfecto para que un papá y un hijo se sienten a leer. Está entendible, el español es muy fácil, y igual Estrella en el Bosque, el español es muy, muy, muy fácil, y es simplemente una vivencia que puede uno compartir con los padres.
Yeah, so Gloria was just talking about both of our books and how maybe my book has a main girl character, so she felt like, you know, that might be more relatable. There are a lot of female characters in my book that might be more relatable. It's like mothers and daughters reading together, whereas Teresa's book, she feels would, you know, be especially wonderful for fathers and sons. She really she feels like sometimes fathers might have trouble expressing some of their deeper emotions. And so she feels like this book could be a way to kind of help fathers and sons kind of open up emotionally to each other. So I think that's a really great observation. And I just wanted to add, just as far as the importance of having Spanish books available, well, in my own personal experience, my mom read me books up through, I think when I was in 8th grade, maybe up to high school. And that was such a really wonderful bonding experience for us. And I think it's so important for native Spanish-speaking families to have a lot of good quality Spanish books available so that they can have that meaningful bonding experience too. And I think especially when it speaks to their culture or their cultural heritage. And I think it also gives the message that, you know, your language is something valuable, you know, your culture is something valuable. And so I think, you know, some of the underlying messages that books in Spanish give, you know, it helps people, helps families understand how valuable it is to speak Spanish, for example. And, you know, Teresa, you were saying that your mother didn't learn Spanish at home because of the prejudice that she might encounter being a native Spanish speaker. And that just breaks my heart to hear, but I think that's a very, very, very common story. And I think now that we know how important language, your native language is to preserve, and what a gift it is to give your children to preserve their native language. You know, I think having Spanish speaking books available, it really encourages that and really helps kids feel proud of this part of themselves.
Yeah, I agree totally. And I think, for me, I knew when I started the series that I would tell a Mexican American story because it's critical for kids to recognize themselves in literature. And we know that now more than ever, which is why we're seeing so many diverse characters in literature today, not just different ethnicities, but, different sexual identities and all kinds of diversity that we're seeing represented in children's literature today is really important. And when I was growing up, there weren't, that I recall, there were not books that were historical fiction that had Mexican American families like mine. And I think that that's still true. I think a lot of people will tell me, I don't think I've ever read a historical novel with a Mexican American main character. So when I go into the classrooms and I tell the kids about this book and I say, and this book is my story, my family was Mexican American, you can see the kids in the classroom who have Mexican American ancestry go, yeah, that's me, yeah. It's really important for kids to find themselves in literature. And so that I wanted that for kids as well, to see that Mexican American families were very present during World War II, and they were contributing, and his brothers flying airplanes for the military, and his families doing their part for the war effort, and very much a fabric of this country's history. So that was important too.
Gloria, I was wondering if, you have a daughter she's 7 or 8 right now. 8? Is Vicky 8 years old?
She's 8.
8 years old.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm wondering, I know that reading is a big part of your life, and I know you've tried to give your love of reading to your daughter. Do you feel like it's a different experience when you read together in Spanish with Vicky versus English?
Sí, hay diferencia. Siempre yo personalmente voy a preferir leer en español. Puedo leer un poco en inglés, pero mi preferencia será en español y yo quiero crecer a una hija que sea bilingüe, que pueda entender los dos idiomas de la misma forma. Ahora más que nunca el bilingüismo está en medio nuestro. Ahorita ya no podemos permitir que se pierda o que se espere para después. Ahorita el bilingüismo, el español es lo mismo que el inglés. Yo quiero que mi hija aprenda español desde chica. Me interesa que aprenda que aprenda a hablar bien, a explicar bien, que se dé a entender bien en español, así como me interesa en inglés. Recuerdo en aquellos años, pues era muy vergonzoso que no hablaras inglés y que hablaras español. Entonces, pues mejor uno se trataba de callar. Pero ahora, I'm very proud to speak Spanish, and I speak Spanish all the time, and I want my daughter she to speak both languages the same way. And I think now more than ever we have to empower them to learn both languages. And tenemos que en los libros, en las enseñanzas, in every classroom, I don't know, that's my idea. Both languages are important. Even for Hispanic or not Hispanic, to speak another language, and Spanish, that is one of the most common, is just great. And not only for Mexicans, not only for people from Colombia or from other, no, just for everybody. Spanish and English are the main languages here. So I think that, and if we can learn a third or fourth language, like my Laura, she speaks like 3 or 4. Yeah, if we speak more languages, will be great. But at least 2, para mí está perfecto.
Yeah, I think, for me, one of the pleasures of having children.
Should we open it up to more questions? Sorry, Teresa, did I interrupt you? I think maybe you were frozen.
Yeah, we have this weird lag where we're freezing. And I just wanted to say quickly that that's a good point, Gloria, in that one of the real pleasures of writing for children is that I know a lot of adults who are trying to learn Spanish find it a good way to practice their Spanish, and to learn Spanish is by reading children's books, because the writing is not as difficult as it would be to read an adult book in Spanish. And so, that's another way that our books are serving, is allowing people who are learning Spanish to read something that's more accessible to them. So that's a good point. And yeah, okay, so yes, maybe Renee has some questions for us.
I do have a couple. I was listening the whole time, and while you guys were discussing, I was trying to pick out other questions to ask, but I just found myself instead agreeing and nodding and thinking, yes, all this is very important, like, diversity in books and finding yourself in books. And so I mostly just have comments and praise, but I do have a couple questions. So we'll start with that. And then we'll also just do a reminder that anyone that's watching either via Zoom or out there on Facebook, feel free to voice your comments and questions. If you're in the Zoom meeting with us, you can raise your hand if you would like to unmute yourself and turn your camera on and ask your question directly, or you can also use the chat and you can relay your question that way. So I guess my first question is kind of just a simple one. Are there any plans to translate the rest of your Homefront Heroes series, Teresa?
Not at the moment. So I own my own press, and I've published all 8 of my books myself. And so this is my business. And so, doing the translation, doing another edition and another print run is kind of an expensive venture. And so I wanted to start with this book for sure, because it means so much to me. So I don't know. I can't say in the future if I will translate any more of the books, but for the time being, this is the one.
Yep. Well, hey, at least it's better one than none, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And that was another just kind of thing that I was just thinking about, kind of from the industry side. So yeah, Teresa, like you said, you self-publish your books. And Laura, you had Star in the Forest translated through Scholastic, kind of the more traditional way. I know you had mentioned that Gloria just kind of went ahead and translated the book, just because, and then the publication came later. But what was kind of the difference in experience, just instead of, kind of handling all the publication stuff on your own versus doing it in a more traditional way? What did that kind of look like on your side, Gloria and Laura?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I feel like, even though Scholastic, so the division of Scholastic is called Scholastic en Español. That's their Spanish publisher. And I don't know that we did it a very traditional way, even though it's a traditional publisher. We basically kind of, so let's see, Scholastic, it was not the original publisher of Star in the Forest. And that was Delacorte Random House. But Scholastic had picked up that book for their book clubs and book fairs. And so it ended up doing really well in their book clubs and book fairs. So it was on their radar. And I was writing my 2 most recent books, The Lightning Queen and Tree of Dreams, were actually published by Scholastic Press. So we kind of had that inroad there. And when Gloria just delightfully just made this amazing translation, kind of volunteering her own time in a way, so she did this amazing translation, and then my agent presented it to my editor at Scholastic and said, hey, do you know the right people to get this to in case they're interested? And it just, luck would have it that the book was already on their radar from the fairs and clubs. And so it was a fairly smooth process to get it into Scholastic en Español. And so Gloria and I were just really delighted at how surprisingly easy that was. The more typical route would be that, my agent would directly sell the foreign language rights in Spanish to the publisher. Then the publisher would find a translator for it. And typically the author wouldn't have a lot of say in that and who the translator would be. And for me, it was really special to have Gloria as the translator, because we, you know, if she had questions about something, like I could get involved and I could say, oh, well, actually, this is what that means, or this is what I was going for, or that, you know, I was able to give my input in a way that if it had been a traditional publishing situation or translation situation, I really wouldn't have been able to probably give that kind of input. So, so yeah, I would say that probably is a big difference, just that personal connection that both Teresa and I have with Gloria and our ability to give input on the process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and as an independent author, I can hire an agent and sell my foreign rights as well.
Mm-hmm.
And there, if somebody bought the foreign rights, then again, a translator in a different area would do that, and I probably wouldn't have much say over it. But you know, one of the benefits of being a self-published author is that I've had to say in all of my books, and I've built them all with certain goals in mind. And so for me to have the ability to choose who I wanted to translate, and then I had a copy editor as well, who works in Spanish, and she copy edited the book. And so, but I'm able to do that myself and be a part of it and get to know these people. And that's pretty special for me.
Yeah, definitely. I agree. And, you know, that's something I just think you hear. I mean, even when I think about picture books, how, you know, a lot of times the writer and the illustrator never see each other. It's a very weird, you know, I mean, I guess in ways it makes sense, but sometimes it seems odd because, yeah, that personal connection can mean so much when you're, you know, working so closely with someone else's creative, you know, output. So,
Yeah.
Yeah. Gloria, did you have anything to add about the process of working with the publisher to get the book translated? Or published in Spanish, I suppose, is already translated. You're muted again.
You're muted, Gloria. We can't hear you.
Again. See, no, the only thing I have to say is I was super lucky. I was lucky to have known this artist, and it was an honor to be able to collaborate with them, and that's it. Yeah, I have not much to say. I was just very honored to be part of.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, it's a great little, you know, kind of community that you've created here with, you know, between you and Laura and now Teresa, and just, you know,
I just wanted to add, Renee, can I add one thing just about working with Gloria? One thing that's really special that I've noticed is Gloria, you can see you heard how beautifully she reads aloud. So whenever she's translating something, she reads it aloud in her beautiful melodious voice. And I think that that's really helpful in books for children because many of them will be read aloud. Mm-hmm. And so you want like the rhythm and the melody of the sentences to be translated in a way that really honors the original. And I think that that's the talent of Gloria's. She does that really, really beautifully.
Yes. Yeah, I thought that while you were reading, Gloria, is that there was just such a nice cadence to every, you know, sentence and paragraph, and it was just very enjoyable. Even though I guess I kind of had an idea of what you were saying because Teresa read it, but if I hadn't heard it, I'd be like, I don't know what's going on, but it sounds beautiful. Okay, so you have a couple questions that just came in. So one is from Patty Smith. She says, well, you guys can read it if you need to, just open up the chat, but do you recommend a publisher to help with a Spanish-speaking book? So I'm guessing maybe Patty, like your.
Do you want me? I can start if that's okay with you, Teresa.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, I have found that it's pretty challenging to find Spanish publishers. I think that's been maybe changing in the past few years, but a lot of publishers that publish Spanish in the United States were more likely to gravitate towards Harry Potter or, you know, some of the really big blockbuster New York Times best-selling hits. Like those were the books they wanted to translate, you know. So, you know, if you're writing like literary fiction or something that maybe has a nice readership but not enormous, then it can be a lot harder to find a Spanish publisher for that book. I hope that things are changing now. I think they might be changing a bit. But, you know, I've written 9 books, and it's been really hard to try and find publishers to be interested in publishing Spanish versions. So that's why this is the only one. And it's not so much the translation issue, it's more the issue of it's a lot easier if you have a publisher who's going to be distributing it, especially in Spanish-speaking countries that we don't have access to. So that's been kind of a big obstacle. So Patty, I wish I had I wish I had the answer, but that's definitely been a big challenge for me. I do have a picture book coming out with a small publisher, an independent publisher called Charles Bridge. I collaborated on this book with an indigenous woman from the Amazon who is a big environmental and indigenous rights leader there. So we collaborated on this book, and Charles Bridge is publishing it simultaneously Spanish and English. So that was a really rare and wonderful thing to happen. But in my experience, that's more the exception rather than the rule. So I don't know, do you have any thoughts to add, Teresa?
No, I think you said that very well. That would have been my answer too.
Yeah, that was actually a question that I was thinking about, was because, you know, we have a very tiny Spanish language, and then, you know, the kind of oddball like French and Japanese, you know, book in the store. And we do have people that come in and ask, you know, do you have books in Spanish? But yeah, a lot of times it's, you know, yeah, the big Harry Potter, or it's, you know, something like that. It's not necessarily a book that, you know, is both in Spanish and also about, you know, people that speak Spanish as their native language and live in, you know, Mexico or wherever. And, you know, it's, you know, great to have books that you can read in your native language, but it's also great to have books that you can read in your native language that are about your own culture and your own background. And I have the question, if you had any experience with that, if there are publishers that, you know, they kind of, you know, do they push back when you talk about a translation, or are they excited about it? And yeah, I guess, you know, there's all those variables, like you said. Are they going to be distributing in a Spanish-speaking country, or is it, you know, is it a, you know, business decision essentially where you won't have a lot of market just in the US? So yeah, I hope you're right though, Teresa. I hope, or Laura, I hope things are changing and that, you know, we see more books of, you know, all varieties being translated. So.
Well, and I think now for me, my books are available, even though they're in English, they're available in other countries through Amazon, and through some, you know, channels like that, and through Ingram, and in certain places. And so like with Fe de la Victoria, I know that like last month, several copies sold in England. And I was like, oh, my Spanish language book is selling in England. That's great. So I think, you know, that in some ways it's easier now for people to try to get the books, but it's still really hard to get them out there into distribution and make people aware of them. That's also very challenging, is making people aware that you have a Spanish translation. So, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's just one, well, it's from David. I'll go ahead and read it out so everyone sees. He says, as a high school English as a second language, or yeah, all these, David, I don't know your translations. I assume I do, but then I read them and now I don't.
I can do that. It's English language arts, high school English language arts.
Wait, oh gosh, I thought I knew, and thank you, Laura, yeah. But he says, teens eat up historical fiction and cross over young adult to adult novels. Easy to find translated informational text using Newsela and WordWorks, but cannot find translated novels for classroom use, which is unfortunate. And then he asks, will Laura and Gloria be translating Red Glass and Queen of Water?
Wow. Hi, David, and thank you. David's an amazing, amazing language arts teacher in Georgia, and his students adore him. So yeah, and he's one of those teachers who goes out of his way to find books that are going to really engage his particular students. And I think that you can see his classroom just thrives with, and just has so much great energy as a result. So yeah, the Queen of Water, we've gotten, so that's in a, I'm trying to think if I have that nearby, I don't know. That is a book that I co-wrote with another Indigenous woman from Ecuador about her experiences essentially as a child slave. And so it's closely based on her true story. And we've gotten many, many requests for, asking for Spanish translations for that. And we actually got inspired, like thanks to all of these requests, we got inspired to touch base with our agents again and suggest that the foreign language agency that she works with, foreign language rights agency that she works with, if they could kind of pitch the book again. This book came out almost 10 years ago, but there's been this resurgence of this new interest in own voices books, and there really aren't very many books by Indigenous women like telling their own stories. And so especially because of this newfound interest that the public has and this like hunger for more books like this, we thought it might be a good time to kind of redouble our efforts to find a publisher. So our agent's on board with that. So we are going to work really, really hard to make that happen. As far as Red Glass, Gloria, you're mostly done with the draft of the translation of Red Glass, right? You're very close to being done. So we are going to try the same thing that we did with Star in the Forest, where we get the translation done and we like put it on a silver platter and maybe hand it to Scholastic or hand it to a publisher and see if they will do the same thing and agree to publish it. But it's hey David, but it's really helpful to get the feedback from teachers and students who love these books, because then we can go to our agent and say, hey, we have a Spanish language audience for this book. They are asking for this book in Spanish. So that's really, really, really helpful in trying to make it happen. So thank you, David. Keep in touch. Fingers crossed.
I was about to ask, actually. I was like, Gloria, are you already halfway through translating both of these books? They're ready to go already?
So, Gloria, how far are you on Red Glass at this point? You're muted again.
Sí, Red Glass ya está finalizado. Estoy revisando nuevamente el manuscrito, pero sí está finalizado.
So Gloria is the rough draft is finished and she's revising it now. So yeah, so I guess we'll just be going over that together, hopefully in person if COVID ever ends and we can get together in person. If not, over Zoom or phone. But yeah.
Make do, yeah.
Well, I will be buying the translation. I those right behind me there, those are all of Laura's books, and I own Star in the Forest and also Estrella en el Bosque. And so I will be excited to have the Spanish translation of Red Glass too. I strongly recommend Laura's books. She's an amazing writer and makes you, many of her stories are set in other places and she makes you feel like you're right there. The sensory details are incredible. I mean, she's just a really, really talented writer.
Thank you. Thank you, Teresa.
And they're available at Old Firehouse Books, so come in and grab them. Gloria, I had a question for you. I was just curious. So, earlier we were talking about how when you're translating a book, you're not just translating the words and figuring out the best word to, use for the English word, but you also have to, get the feel and the mood and everything. When you're translating a book, does it feel similar to when you're writing your own stories? Does it feel like you're writing the book again, or does it feel like, no, I'm still just translating?
Sí, you're right. I kind of feel that it's my own. Yo trabajo con las historias y las hago mías. I try to make them mine, and I try to feel. At the beginning, I start reading and I just close my eyes and like to figure it out. Where they are, how they are dressing up, how they look like, and then immediately I picture someone that I already know.
Mhm.
And I say, oh, it's this. And I start doing the translation with that in mind, and when that voice in here, and with the movements, the faces, and yeah. I always close my eyes and I start like a reading, and closing my eyes helps me a lot to put me where these people were, what they were doing, and things like that. So sí, es divertido, es como escribir mis propios ensayos.
Yeah,
Sí.
that's, and I suppose that's got to be a testament to your ability to translate, and also just then a testament to Laura's writing to be able to immerse yourself in something that someone has already created and make it feel like it's your own. So
Yeah.
I think
Creo,
that,
perdón, creo que in every single thing you work, you leave a piece of you. You leave a little sentiment, a little feeling, and you get to know them very well as the writer. And we were speaking about the kid from B de la Victoria, and I was thinking about him like my little brother or something like that. Yeah, and you have to do that in order to be able to tell the feelings, his faces, when he's not in good mood, and things like that. So it was fun. It was fun.
Laura,
I think, sorry, I was just going to add to, I think one really neat thing about Gloria is that she really enters the story with her whole heart and soul when she's translating it. And when I hear her talking about one of my stories, or like Teresa's story, she lights up when she's talking about different scenes and different characters. And you know, you can tell that she's experiencing those emotions with her entire being. And I think that really makes her a wonderful translator, because she is so passionate and involved in the story.
Muy pasional.
Yes, definitely. And it was funny because sometimes when we were talking about Miguel, who's the character, and she would say, well, Miguel is this kind of kid and he's that kind of kid, so I think he would say it this way. And she was always exactly accurate. I'm like, yes, that is who he is as a child. She saw him as an individual and she knew who he was, and it was really fun. Yeah.
Don't find that in every translator, do you? So I have a couple questions from our very own Julie Rowan-Zach, who I believe most of you probably know. So hi, Julie, if you're still watching. So she asked, first, did the publishers have to ask Gloria for any kind of language accreditation? And then she is also curious to know, has Gloria ever translated books in rhyme, possibly for the very young? Just wondering how hard that might be. It's a very good question.
Sí he traducido libros en rima. Mamis Felices fue uno de los que hice la traducción. En el 2016 también, exactamente en el año que traduje Estrella en el Bosque. It was in 2016 when I worked with Mamis Felices, Happy Mamas. And that book is in rhyme. And it was a challenge. Because at that moment I was like a child I was writing my own verses and rhymes and things like that, and I was fighting with some of the rhythms in Spanish, and in some of them that I wanted to change in order to make the rhyme, I couldn't because it would change the significance. And it's super fun to translate like poetry and things like that. Is it's a challenge, but it's the same. It's like you fighting with the words, with the beauty of the words we have. Yeah.
Yeah, and I got to witness Gloria translating Happy Mamas, Mamis Felices, and I felt like she was the perfect person for that because she was reading it out loud constantly. And she was trying out different words because that book is very playful, and the language is the sounds and the rhythms. It's just very playful. So she had to capture that spirit. So I think rhyming, translating rhyming books is more challenging, but I think if you're not afraid to really get into it, read it aloud and experiment with language, I think that you can do a good job with it like she did.
All right. Great. Well, if there are no more questions, which I don't see any, I think we got them all answered. I think we can go ahead and wrap it up for the evening. Do any of you have any final comments or remarks? Anything?
Just thank you, Renee, for this evening, for this opportunity, but also just for, I know it's been a really challenging time for Old Firehouse and for independent bookstores, and just thank you guys for continuing to hang in there and be creative in how you serve people. And I know it's been a tough time, and we're just so glad that you're still plugging along and making it work. So thank you for that.
Yeah, I just want to echo that. We love Old Firehouse Books, and we are eternally grateful to you. You're so supportive of local authors. And, I think, Teresa, you have books available that are autographed through Old Firehouse. And I live a few blocks away. I would be happy to run down there and autograph any books too. So yeah, thank you. And thank you everybody who came. We really are grateful for that. Thank you.
Yes.
Sí, muchísimas gracias a toda la gente que va a ver este video después, porque no solo ahorita lo pueden ver, me parece que en YouTube, ¿no, Laura?
Yeah, it will be available on YouTube. In about, we think maybe in about a week.
La gente que lo vea en español, muchísimas gracias por tomar el tiempo de verlo, y esperamos que aprendan un poco de estas magníficas escritoras. Yo he aprendido mucho, y proud to be brown.
Yeah. Right. Well, yes. Thank you to all of you for being here, and thank you for your kind words. And you support us just as much as we like to support you. So it's really a two-way street, and we are happy to have such a good relationship with so many local authors. So we appreciate you as well. And yes, thank you also to everyone who came and hung out with us for an hour and engaged in the conversation. We appreciate you as well. Like Laura and Teresa were saying, both of their books are available at our store. They're happy to get them signed. So if you are ordering online, there is a comment section on our website where you can just say, I would like a signed copy, please sign to so-and-so, and we can make that happen for you. The link again, if you're watching on Facebook, it's included in the description of the video. If you're here in Zoom, it is also in the Zoom chat, so you can find that really quick. Otherwise, our website is oldfirehousebooks.com. You can go there, search for any book you like, but we like to encourage you to go and buy Teresa's and Laura's. So, again, thank you guys for being here. We will have this up on YouTube shortly. It will also be available on Facebook later. And we also want to do just a little shout out to Fort Collins Public Media, who also helps to promote and share these events after the fact. So thank you to them. And that is all. So thanks again. And you guys have a fantastic rest of your night. We'll hopefully see you in person sometime soon.
Thank you.